Court media pretends Feinstein doesn't have dementia. And this is the clip where we're going to see what I'm talking about, how they pretend, or as we watch it, as we get more into it, I'll let the video will kind of explain itself. All right, so let's play. Where is the controls? This one. Let's play the video.
In Washington, California Congresswoman Katie Porter is getting a little bit of flack from some members of her own party after the progressive lawmaker announced today she wants to run for Senate in 2024. Porter's potential rivals are taking aim at the timing of her announcement. A source close to Adam Schiff calls it an incredible mistake for her to launch a campaign right now, adding, and I'm quoting here, that we are not going to announce in the middle of a natural disaster and are surprised that others would do so. Another Democrat, Ro Khanna, telling NBC he's also focused on the historic weather conditions back home. Here's another reason why this announcement is so notable. It's because
So Ro Khanna and Adam Schiff are two people that the establishment in mainstream media, corporate media, I should say, not mainstream. We're mainstream, they're corporate. They're saying Ro Khanna and Adam Schiff are the ones that should be running or will be running for this seat. And Katie Porter getting out and announcing this is a problem for them. So let's listen some more. Shout out Case Study QB for the clip.
The senior Democrat in California, Dianne Feinstein, has said she hasn't made a decision yet about what she's going to do for 2024. She certainly has not announced that she's going to.
She hasn't made a decision yet. Not like dementia has already made the decision for her. This is where they're going to pretend as if Dianne Feinstein is going to continue here. Like she's not Ronald Reagan. She can't keep doing this for multiple terms. It's already getting out clearly that there's a problem. They covered it in The Rising Heel. Actually, they covered this too this morning. Robbie and Brianna. But let's continue with Case Studies QB's clip.
Is going to clear the way for somebody else to take her position, telling NBC today she's going to make an announcement at the appropriate time. I want to bring in now NBC News senior political editor Mark Murray, who is joining us now. And Mark, Porter's communications director tweeted today that the Congresswoman raised something like $250,000 in just 90 minutes after this announcement, right? That puts her on pace for numbers that her campaign, really, her office hasn't seen before, right? It is a bold move.
News. Katie Porter has raised over $250,000 in 90 minutes since this morning's Senate campaign launch, on pace to blow past the public first day fundraising goal of $500,000. Just like that. Raise that money just like that. I wonder from who? Who's giving her this money? Let's continue.
Move by the Congresswoman here to announce now.
Absolutely. And a bold move sometimes to be able to end up getting your name out there where there already is an incumbent senator in Dianne.
And if I didn't make it clear, Katie Porter is as milquetoast as they come. If I didn't make that clear. She's as milquetoast as they get.
And Feinstein, you need to be bold, Hallie. And it is true that Katie Porter has actually been able to raise a significant amount of money in her previous bids for Congress in her Orange County seat. But it's also interesting that Feinstein decides not to run, or even if she does, this is going to be a very crowded field. That you will not only end up seeing the lights of potentially Adam Schiff, as you mentioned, or Ro Khanna, other Democratic members of Congress, but also Republicans and maybe even other celebrities in California. Hallie, remember this, California employs a top two primary system. So the top two vote getters, regardless of party, end up advancing to the general election. And that could actually end up having some fascinating combinations. And if you have some 10 or 15 candidates all running for this seat, means that maybe those top two folks, you only need 15 or 20% of the vote on the primary. So this is going to be fascinating to watch over the next 2 years.
Yeah, especially because you have, the Schiff dynamic here. You have the dynamic of others involved, including, of course, Senator Feinstein, who, as you know, Mark, her and her office have had to address concerns about her current ability to do the job.
This is how they're talking about what they know. I'm talking about the two people on the screen. They have confirmation that this person she doesn't know when people are there. She doesn't know some of the people, recognize people, her friends, her family. There's people she doesn't recognize at certain points. Maybe she recognizes them and then doesn't. Sometimes doesn't know where she's at. In the Senate, has a babysitter. Both of these people know that. And they're pretending, it's this. What did Adam Schiff said? What was his critique? You're announcing in a pandemic and before she retires, it's all about the proper steps and who's next in line. Nothing to do with democracy. Let's continue with the video.
Her and her office have had to address concerns about her current ability to do the job. In her ability to remember key pieces of information, et cetera. Her team has brushed off that criticism largely, and in some instances has criticized the criticism. But talk through how realistic it is that she would actually run for another term.
Yeah, and so there's going to be a whole lot more scrutiny on Senator Feinstein than there was the last time she was up for re-election in 2018 and won under California's top two primary system, where she ran against a fellow Democrat, that time from the progressive left. But 6 years later, 5 years later, Hallie, and yes, there are more concerns about Feinstein and whether the vigors of actually a really competitive Senate campaign that she can actually end up doing. And I think one of the reasons, looking at Katie Porter's really aggressive move getting out of the gates today, even during all these storms, is that there are people who see Feinstein to be very vulnerable. And there are a lot of Democrats, whether in Congress or who are statewide elected officials already, who are looking advancement in that blue state.
Porter is somebody who has raised her profile in the House of Representatives through some of these moments that have, for example, gone viral when she's been on committees or in subcommittee hearings, et cetera. She's been able to, in some ways, break through and make some headlines here.
That's right. And to be able to raise money to Hallie. And it is interesting that she comes from the progressive wing, kind of the Elizabeth Warren wing of the Democratic Party. She was a vocal advocate of Elizabeth Warren's presidential bid in the 2020 cycle, really kind of comes as an acolyte of Elizabeth Warren's. And I think it's going to be interesting to see what kind of composition of Democrats, Republicans, moderates, independents that we all get. And what's going to be a free-for-all and potentially really competitive and crowded top two primary.
Mark Murray, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
So that's the first clip. There's another clip where we're going to hear directly now from Katie. And it's also a case study QB clip. Wait, is it this way? Yeah. She was on The Last Word with Loris O'Donnell. And believe it or not, I used to watch this guy. I watched all mainstream or corporate-owned media because they're not mainstream. All of these shows, MSNBC, CNN. But let's listen to. She comes on his show to announce. So let's listen to this.
The first time Katie Porter went to work in a House committee hearing in 2019, we saw right away that Katie Porter knew how to use props and knew how to play to the cameras recording the hearing. Katie Porter whiteboard instantly became her trademark in hearings. She joined us on this program after that first hearing and has been a steadily rising star in the House of Representatives since then. On Friday night, even though she had no opportunity to speak on the House floor, Katie Porter knew the power of the prop. As you see in this photograph where she is so plainly reading or pretending to read a book titled The Subtle Art of Not Giving a F. Katie Porter is joining us tonight for an exclusive interview about the big announcement that she made today.
The threat from so-called leaders like Mitch McConnell has too often made the United States Senate the place where rights get revoked, special interests get rewarded, and our democracy gets rigged. Especially in times like these, California needs a warrior in Washington. That's exactly why I'm announcing my candidacy for the United States Senate in 2024. I don't do Congress the way others often do. I use whatever power I have to speak hard truths to the powers that be, to not just challenge the status quo, but call it out, name names, and demand justice.
Joining us now is Democratic Congressman Katie Porter of California, who is now a candidate for United States Senate. Congresswoman Porter, the first question has to be what America's been wondering since Friday night. Were you really reading that book or just pretending to read that book for the photograph?
I was absolutely reading that book. It was actually my fourth book of the week. I had read a book basically every day during those interminable alphabetical votes in which the Republicans struggled to find leadership. And so that book I picked up at a little free library on my walk from my basement studio here in Washington to the Capitol building.
Okay, so you really were reading it.
This is the thing that the professional managerial class likes to talk about. You're reading a book that says this, how to something bullshit. Like when Nancy Pelosi clapped or tore up something from Donald Trump. Oh, look what she is like. This is such not a thing. But anyway, let's continue. Not the point of the story.
So Senator Dianne Feinstein, that's the seat you'd be running for. She is 89 years old. She would be 91 years old during the re-election campaign if she joins the re-election campaign. 92 years old when elected. That would take her term up to 98, 6-year term. She issued a statement today in reaction to your announcement saying, everyone is, of course, welcome to throw their hat in the ring, and I will make an announcement concerning my plans for 2024 at the appropriate time. Right now, I'm focused on ensuring California has all the resources it needs to cope with the devastating storms slamming the state and leaving more than a dozen dead. What is your reaction to that statement by Senator Feinstein?
Well, I would echo what Senator Feinstein said. I think she's exactly right. This should be a race in which there are different people stepping up and
now both of y'all know that Dianne Feinstein did not write a letter on that of that statement. She didn't click the space sign, the space bar at all. She didn't click a letter or space bar in any part of that statement at all. Somebody wrote that. So, and we all know that
Californians get to decide who represents them in the U.S. Senate. Dianne Feinstein is a trailblazer, and the path that she has created for women in politics is what.
Like I said, Katie Porter is the milquetoast of the milquetoast. What does that do to say she's a trailblazer and to use her as some sort of person to aspire to be for women? None of my 3 daughters do I want to aspire to be like Dianne Feinstein, who has been corrupt for decades, who is corrupt now. This is the reason why she is even still there, when she should be at home spending time with her family. And spending time with her family because of the condition she has, not necessarily her age. It's not like everybody at that age has to do that, but she clearly, everybody knows she has a condition, and that's why she should be home spending time with her family. But she's not, because she's corrupt. And Katie Porter wants to point out how she's great. You see the problem with being a progressive Democrat, being a progressive in the Democratic Party? You got to keep playing to the Democratic Party so they don't really bulldoze you. So that's their play. Let me give respect. I'm running regardless if she's running, is what you should be saying. I'm running regardless if she's running because she's corrupt and she needs to get the hell up out of here. these milquetoast professional managerial class people that's held up as some progressive garbage. I don't get it, but let's go.
One that I was able to follow right to the House of Representatives, and she has accomplished a lot, and I look forward.
She has accomplished a lot.
To following in her footsteps to represent California in the U.S. Senate. I also want to echo what Senator Feinstein said about the terrible storms that are ravaging California right now. But those storms really illustrate what's at stake. We cannot continue to have a Washington that ignores the threats of climate change, that is willing to cozy up to special interests like big oil rather than stand up to them. So my kids are in California. I hope they're staying safe and dry. And my thoughts are with the first responders and all of the people who are suffering and having to.
This where you have to come out and say all these things anyway
To bunker down and be safe. But this is what's at stake in this race. Are we going to have a Senate that stands up to problems like climate change, that understands that our
we're not.
Future is under attack?
No, the Senate is specifically set up to be against those sort of progressive things. So no.
Are already being criticized by some Democrats in California Democrats who could be rivals to you in this campaign for announcing in the middle of this storm saying that that's an inappropriate time when California is.
It's an inappropriate time. There's a certain way to do it. Rules, norms.
Being battered this way to announce a campaign like this.
Well, as I just said, those storms, which are going to keep coming in the next few days, in the next few months, in the next years, are a result of us ignoring problems for too long in Washington, decade after decade of not being willing to fight.
You see how she took a part of the question and addressed that without answering the question. So I mean, I'm not a Katie Porter person, and I've heard nothing but professional managerial class people talk in positive light about her, but she's next to me. She's in Orange County, and I'm right at the border of Orange County. Wife's from Orange County, so yeah. I think I'm gonna end it here with Kate. Actually, I'm not gonna end it here. I have another video. My bad. I forgot about that. Because I'm like, it seems incomplete. That is incomplete because the other video I have is So I do want to play part of Rising with Brianna and Robbie on as part of this segment because there is part of there is a couple of things covered in there that I didn't cover here. All right, so my daughter has been watching TV here, so that's why all the history. But anyway, let me type it in. So I am going to Rising Hill. And it is this one right here. So let's listen to Rising's coverage of the same topic. There's a couple of different
Representative Katie Porter announced she will be running for Senator Dianne Feinstein's California Senate seat in 2024. Porter has previously acknowledged that she was considering a bid for this expected open seat. According to The Hill, while Feinstein has not officially announced her retirement, it is anticipated that she will in the next few months. Let's watch part of Porter's announcement video.
California needs a warrior in Washington. That's exactly why I'm announcing my candidacy for the United States Senate in 2024. I don't do Congress the way others often do. I use whatever power I have to speak hard truths to the powers that be, to not just challenge the status quo, but call it out, name names, and demand justice. That goes for taking on Wall Street and the big banks, big oil, and big pharma. It's why I refuse to accept corporate PAC and lobbyist campaign money. I don't want it. And I'm leading the fight to ban congressional stock trading because it's just wrong. To win these fights, it's time for new leadership in the U.S. Senate.
Now, you know how it says she wrote the legislation? That is the very reason they sponsor legislation and write legislation knowing it's never going to get passed is so that they can put it in ads just like this. And that is proof. See, I'm fighting for it. So understand the Pramila Jayapal, I don't think it was Medicare for All bill. These are all bills written, and I think she's writing a new one for something else, not Medicare for All, that she announced. This is all to project, to virtue signal, to put in ads like this. So let's continue with this, with the coverage from Rising.
If you agree, please go to katieporter.com and join my campaign for the U.S. Senate today. Thank you for caring about the California we can build together.
According to Fox News, Porter's Senate campaign could be tainted by allegations of toxic workplace culture. An ex-staffer alleged that the Congresswoman made rude and even racist comments to staff and said that she, quote, ridiculed people for reporting sexual harassment. And we actually did interview a former Katie Porter staffer on the show last week, I believe. It was an interesting story. I'd encourage people to go back and watch that clip if they missed it. The staffer got blamed for giving Representative Porter COVID.
After she had gone to a funeral for one of her former
she was going through something kind of traumatic.
So Katie Porter, the way she treated her worker, you see how the professional managerial class, they're really just liberals. They're really just conservatives. Well, a couple of policy differences. But the true illustration is how she treated her employee. And listen to this.
And the texts are pretty. I mean, I personally have a pretty high bar for. I think there's a lot of complaining, anonymous complaining from staffers about how they're treated. I think maybe a lot of young people, maybe Gen Z people, don't understand that you actually have to work sometimes, and bosses sometimes going to be a little strict with you. This one seemed to go over a kind of line because we saw the text message where Katie Porter is just berating this woman for allegedly giving her COVID. But who had COVID?
Texas. It's text showing Katie Porter berating her employee for getting COVID while at a family funeral.
Or at least demonstrating a certain lack of sensitivity that I think would be warranted in the circumstance.
Anyway, I'm not saying that.
However,
you want to talk about her more broad policy, that's fine.
I'm glad Robbie brought that up. I'm glad he brought that up because I didn't know that. Because like I said, I don't know much about Katie Porter. Once I identified her as Milquetoast, like I didn't need to know anything else about that person.
Katie Porter, regardless, I think has been one of the least disappointing progressives of the 2018 bunch for a couple of reasons.
Listen how Bree has to describe her. Not that Katie Porter's great. Katie Porter has been one of the few people we can count on. Katie Porter has been one of the few progressives that has been great. Katie Porter has been one of the least disappointing.
One, she didn't overextend herself in making kind of broad, very lefty commitments the way that some of the squad members have. I don't believe she's ever identified as a socialist, hasn't really defined herself in terms of policies like abolish ICE or defund the police the way that some of the others have. She stayed more squarely in an economic populist pocket, which has made her incredibly popular. Her whiteboard displays where she, calls out the big banks. She was a member of the Financial Services Committee, which is a committee that people love to be on because of your proximity to Wall Street and your ability to fundraise from those institutions. She was in fact kicked off said committee after 2 years on it by Maxine Waters, apparently because her demonstrations were so effective. It was basically embarrassing people who wanted to go ahead and be able to use these banks as a fundraising tool. So she's very effective. She flipped a red district blue back in 2018, despite being extremely progressive on an economic front. And I think it's the kind of person who could have a long, very public career in politics as leftists are looking to see who can carry the banner potentially in another presidential run. Someone like Katie Porter, I think.
Let me listen to Bree here.
Has a lot of features that would make her a broadly appealing candidate in a way that some of the other squad members might start to flag on a national basis.
But she is.
However,
she's getting to the however.
Despite all of those, I think, wonderful attributes, she's received some pushback from Democrats, from liberals about the nature and timing of her announcement. One Twitter user, in fact, critical of Katie Porter's choice to announce when she did announce, ended up saying it's pretty disrespectful to announce ahead of Feinstein's decision. And this is one of the worst campaign launch videos I've ever seen. Another said yesterday, an Adam Schiff source tells me not to expect a Senate announcement today. You don't announce.
Because Adam Schiff expected that seat. It's his turn.
A campaign in the middle of a natural disaster.
This is hilarious to think that they have to wait for Dianne Feinstein to say she's going to retire. Like, she doesn't own this seat. And I'm sorry, this is not trying to be mean here, but we've covered this. This is an open secret now that Senator Feinstein is very old and is having issues knowing who she is talking to and what's going on.
Yep.
It is absolutely unacceptable that she is still in the Senate. This is not my opinion. This is reporting. This has been very well demonstrated by people she talks to that she is not capable of doing the job, that she's in a kind of elderly state where she has good days and she has bad days.
Yep.
But it is inconceivable that she has not retired yet. She must retire. And no one should feel like they have to wait. It doesn't belong to her, especially given what's going on with her. I think that's the most absurd thinking.
Yeah, it's pretty bizarre. It definitely has the flair of those Ruth Bader Ginsburg, don't retire, it's your turn pieces that got written about when people raised the legitimate concern about a woman who had survived pancreatic cancer, one of the most deadly kinds of cancers, regrettably, continuing on the bench into a Republican administration, hoping apparently that she could have Hillary Clinton replace her. The hubris of saying, I want to be replaced by the first woman president, and therefore I'm not going to step down under Obama, has caused a lot of what Democrats are contending with today in terms of Roe v. Wade and the Supreme Court. I mean, even the most sympathetic pro-woman columnist like Rebecca Traister, who I think participated in a lot of that leave RBG alone, she can retire when she wants to rhetoric, has said after a 30-minute phone call she had with Dianne Feinstein that while nothing suggested a deterioration beyond what would be normal for a person her age, the call didn't demonstrate any urgent engagement with the various crises facing the nation. Every question I asked about the radicalization of the GOP, the end of Roe, the failures of Congress, was met with a similar sunny imperviousness, evincing an undiminished belief in institutional power that may in fact explain a lot about where Feinstein and other Democratic leaders have gone wrong. And that's from one of the most pro-girl boss writers that you're gonna find in the United States of America.
Right, and with RBG, unlike Feinstein,
that was a bunch of word salad to not say and accurately describe the condition of Dianne Feinstein. And that's the reporter. And that's why I said these reporters, man, you can't trust them.